Welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 162nd edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 604th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, March 26th, 2020. I am your host, Jerod Morris. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
The impact of the 2020 NCAA tournament being canceled is far-reaching. We will forever have a gap in the record books, and frustrating unanswered questions about how this season would have played out will linger for as long as college basketball is played. In other words, we won't be done looking back on this season anytime soon. But this week, with no new games to focus on, college basketball analysts across the country began the process of looking forward to next season. And while it is far too early to put much stock into these projections, since so many roster changes will occur between now and the opening tip of the 2020-2021 season, the general placement of your Indiana Hoosiers in these projections does offer a semi-useful suggestion for what national expectations are likely to be heading into next season. And the overall outlook is solid, more or less. Bart Torvik's 2021 projections are up, and his algorithm, which consistently rated the Hoosiers lower than Ken Pom last season, has Indiana at number 21. And it should be noted that Bart's algorithm does not include projections for Christian Lander and doesn't seem to expect much, if anything, from Trey Galloway. That was the highest I saw Indiana rated, 21st in Bart Torvik. A few other publications had Indiana in one of the final few spots in their top 25, or the Hoosiers were in the other teams considered category. And that seems to be the general consensus. At this early point in the offseason, Indiana is almost universally projected to be one of the top 30 teams in the country next season. If we assume that Christian Lander is able to reclassify and that the Hoosiers don't lose anyone projected to be in the rotation, especially Trace Jackson-Davis, I imagine that's what the official preseason projections will look like come September and October. What does it mean? Well, if we agree that a fair minimum bar for success for next season is to be comfortably off the bubble come March and finish in at least the top half of the Big Ten, since that would represent another small but meaningful step forward under Archie Miller, these projections suggest that Indiana will, once again, basically just clear that bar. And while I don't think anyone would be ecstatic with those results, just getting used to being consistently satisfied would be a welcome change for IU fans and a continuation of Indiana's slow but steady progress back up the ladder of college basketball. All right, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. Andy Bottoms is off tonight, but tomorrow night he will be hosting our live rewatch of the Indiana-Louisville game from 1993 from the Sweet 16 of that tournament. Galen Clavio and Chris Williams from IU Artifacts will be joining him. I will not be there, but here is my nomination for the banner moment.
Blocked by Chaney, and a little whooping taking place. They certainly are not discussing the state of the stock market. That is an embarrassing play when you go for the slam and a guy takes away your manhood, if you will.
Embarrassing indeed. One of my absolute favorite Calvert Chaney moments. Did not back down at all. That is obviously one of those moments in that game, but a really, really good game, a great performance, one of Calvert's best performances. So for that reason and many more, you should watch it. And you can get the details for our live rewatch series, plus the YouTube links to watch the games at assemblycall.com/rewatch. Tomorrow, that's Friday, the live rewatch begins at 8 o'clock Eastern with the postgame show immediately afterwards. All right, now here with me tonight, to my left.
He remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's Tonsoni time.
I don't like carrots.
Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Jerod, for outstanding leadership that you've shown during this change in programming. I would rate you a 10 out of 10 on your leadership. So I've learned a lot by watching television to make sure we praise our leaders, and you are doing a great job. Seriously, I haven't had a carrot in 13, 14 days or whatever since that show, so I want to make sure chat mobs know that I am restraining from carrots.
Stick to your guns, Coach. Stick to your guns.
Absolutely. Eating other healthy food. But as far as Indiana basketball goes, I want to make sure that we do a good discussion with Devonte Green and Deron Davis. Anyone who puts 4 years into Indiana should get some recognition regardless of how they played or what they contributed. I want to make sure I'm staying positive on that. I'm also looking forward to next year's roster, and especially if we get the reclassified news that we're looking for. So, but I'm also want to be a little more cautious this offseason in my discussions here and elsewhere. And because I thought last year I evaluated the Hoosiers on where they could be and their highest level instead of maybe where honestly they could be. And we do have some young players coming in, and they will play young still. And so I've been kind of giving myself a pep talk on how I'm going to talk about Indiana basketball. I am excited. I think the tournament was made this year as a 10th seed. And you're exactly right. You need to be a top 25 team, get that 6-7 seed at the least next year moving forward. Be in the top 4 or 5 in the Big Ten would be a nice place to go, and then start being consistently. And I think we're headed in that way. But I want to make sure that I'm a little more grounded this offseason than I was last offseason, because we obviously did not get what we needed from a lot of players as far as their position on the basketball team. So cautiously optimistic, and just thankful again for everyone here, everyone in the chat mob, for Home Field Apparel. At a time with no sports, it's really tough. You got to have really good friends and good people around you, and I consider this whole thing one of the best things going in Indiana right now. So thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. All right, and to my right.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
What's next? Locusts?
Ryan, what do you have to rant about tonight?
No locusts this week. I'm going to go back to what you were talking about, Jerod, about next year and about the projections. And honestly, if you're looking at what Indiana brings back and what they lose, I mean, you lose two guys in Devonte Green and Deron Davis. Devonte Green clearly won this team a few games this year with his offense, put them over the top in some games where they played well. Deron Davis had some really good moments, but, Devonte Green also hurt the team in other games. So I feel like that kind of balances out what you're losing there. And Deron Davis, for a lot of the season wasn't effective because obviously injuries and things he'd run into and his inability to stay in shape and all that physically. So when you look at what's coming back, there's a lot to be excited about. And when you look at a top 25 projection, you look at that and you say, well, that makes sense. Last year, this team made a step forward, or this past season made a step forward. It wasn't the step forward we were hoping for, but you also saw guys like Jerome Hunter and Race Thompson as you ended the year starting to become more confident and become bigger parts of the rotation. If you project those guys to continue to improve, and then you bring back, an Al Durham who was playing well at the end of the year, you project, I know this didn't happen. We all really expected a big jump from Rob Finney this year. It didn't happen. Health had something to do with that. But let's say you project a decent jump from Rob Finney. You basically have the team already, and you move them, forward a little bit, add the new pieces, especially if Christian Lander comes early, which we're all assuming is going to happen. There should be a team in the top 25. And you look at this past season, and there was a long stretch of this season where Indiana was sitting outside the top 25, but in that 26 to 40 range of, others receiving votes or maybe just outside that. And so you take there where they were this year. They don't really lose any huge pieces. You lose Devonte Green again, who won you some games, but also struggled in others. So you pretty much losing a neutral player there. And then project these guys forward and add the pieces that are coming in. You have to feel good about where Indiana is. And I think that's just what I've gotten from all those projections is everybody's expecting growth from this team. They're not losing a whole lot. Michigan State's losing the guy who's been their leader for 3+ years. Other teams are losing major pieces. Indiana's really not losing a star. Plus you're bringing back a guy who's going to be in contention, in my opinion, for Big Ten Player of the Year in Trace Jackson Davis, or he's at least going to be in the conversation to open the season. So I think you got to feel good about where Indiana's at coming back, especially if you bring in Lander. We all seem to like Anthony Leal. We all seem to like Trey Galloway. We all seem to like Jordan Geronimo. those are guys who can all just add to the mix and make this better, make it a more dynamic, more athletic team that does, those guys coming in do a lot of the right things and are smart basketball players who play hard. It's kind of what was missing this year at times, was that all-out effort, and those guys all certainly bring it. So you feel good looking forward. It's sad that we have to look forward now because we were expecting to still have the tournament going on and a lot of other things, and hopefully maybe be in the second weekend of the tournament. But this is something I think that we can be positive about and look forward to. Is that this team looks like it's going to improve next year.
All right, here's what we will talk about this week. We're going to go through some Hoosier headlines here in segment 1, and then we're going to talk about 3 lingering questions about Devonte Green, and then we will hop into the Mediocre Mailbag and answer the questions that you all sent in. That is coming this week on Assembly Call Radio. Before we get to all that, just a few quick announcements. A reminder, again, assemblycall.com/rewatch is the URL to go to for the schedule for the live rewatch series. We've done the first 2. You can check out the replays for those, and then we have 6 more coming up. This weekend, we're doing IU Louisville on Friday, and then on Sunday, we'll be doing the IU Kent State game from 2002. And, of course, remember to support our friends at Home Field. Coach, I think I saw a tweet from you that you bought 4 shirts earlier today. I just saw Richie in the chat said he bought 3 shirts. Are you wearing what shirt are you wearing right now?
The state of Indiana with the block eye.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so look, they have tons of stuff at Home Field Apparel. And they have a lot more than just Indiana stuff too. So you might go there, maybe your wife or your cousin or another family member or a friend went to a different school. You might be able to find a gift for them there. Go support our friends at Home Field Apparel. They're doing everything to keep their business running and support their employees, as obviously we all go through a tough time. So support them or support some small business. And then if you want to support a local food bank, foodpantries.org and feedingamerica.org are 2 great websites to find local food banks in your area. Remember that a lot of kids who are out of school, they rely on school for maybe a couple meals a day. And so food banks really pick up a lot of the extra slack when schools are out and when there are issues like what we're facing right now. So foodpantries.org and feedingamerica.org are a couple of great options to go to. All right, guys, let's roll through a few Hoosier headlines. Obviously not a lot on the menu this week, but there were a few. The first one deals with recruiting or incoming recruits. Jordan Geronimo named New Hampshire Player of the Year, which was nice to see. And while neither Anthony Leal or Trey Galloway was named Indiana Player of the Year, perhaps the top recruit remaining on any Indiana hot board that you look at, Trey Kaufman, was named Gatorade Player of the Year. And what is really notable about that is he's only a junior. And when you start looking at some of the names of guys who won that as a junior, you're talking about, the Damon Baileys, the Romeo Langfords, like guys who were among the best of the best. And so that is pretty high praise for Trey Kaufman to win that award as a junior. By all accounts, Indiana's in really good position with him. So
yeah, no, that's a huge deal. I mean, I don't think it's hard to understate how big a deal that is and overstate. I mean, and I would say, too, with Trey, he's a guy who could do a lot of things on the basketball court, and people are really going to like him. He's not a one-note, post-only guy or anything. He's a guy who can step out and do some things, and honestly, he's a guy who could play with a lot of the guys that Indiana has on its roster. So this is, Indiana's got to get him, I think. That'd be a huge deal if Indiana got him.
We have breaking news. Breaking NCAA tournament simulation news from the folks at NCAA Sim 2020. Your Indiana Hoosiers are in the Elite Eight, ladies and gentlemen.
This is just starting to make me angry. It really is starting to make me angry.
If you haven't been following this on Twitter, NCAA Sim 2020, I don't know what they're using to simulate, but they've simulated through, and I don't know how they put their bracket together, but I think Indiana was an 11 seed. And now Indiana in the Sweet 16 facing Arizona. They win 74-66. So the Hoosiers moving on to the Elite Eight. Trace Jackson Davis, 13 points, 9 rebounds.
They were up like 17 at halftime in that simulation. I was like, what are they using to do this? Is it 2 guys in their basement, like just shooting hoops against each other? Or what are they? Oh, man.
Well,
I'll take it, though.
I did a simulation of our bracket using Bart Torvik's predictive model, and guess who won? Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So,
no
kidding.
Did
that as well.
No, he's got little glitches in his algorithm to
I like his work. But Wisconsin, come on.
We love Bart on this show. Bart's a great guy, but he is a Wisconsin fan,
yes,
so that's why that joke is funny.
But Indiana to Elite Eight, that's something that after these 2 weeks is kind of nice to see.
That's right. Simulated Elite Eight, but hey, we'll take it. We will take it. Okay, so the other really interesting news is that the NCAA announced that payouts to member institutions will be much smaller this year due to the cancellation of March Madness. Now, this was not a surprise. This was expected. And that is, as you would expect, going to have a cascading impact on athletic departments big and small, especially on smaller mid-major schools that really, really rely on these payouts.
Yeah, a lot of recruiting budgets are going to be cut, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Fred Glass released a statement. He said, in addition to pursuing our number one priority of helping to protect the health and safety of our students, coaches, staff, and fans, we have also been working to mitigate the financial impact of the anticipated reductions in the distributions we traditionally receive from the NCAA and Big Ten. Basically, freezes on raises, freezes on bonuses, a lot of different cost-cutting measures. I think they're freezing any new building facilities type improvements. So I don't know what that means for the updates they're doing to Cook Hall. I guess those are going to be frozen in place. So look,
have they started them yet?
They had started. There'd been construction.
Then they're probably already paid for. Quite frankly, if they started them, they don't pay as they go on those.
Oh, okay. So maybe
I would imagine that was factored into a previous budget.
Yeah. Now I don't know if the workers are able to actually go there and work right now.
Right.
Maybe you have to wait on that. But yeah, I mean it's it's going to be interesting. I read an article from the AD of Texas A&M, that was talking about, because obviously the football season is going to come before the basketball season, but if they're not, if we're not back at the point yet where we can have large gatherings of people, and a school like A&M or even a school like Indiana that may only get 30 to 40,000 people, those gate receipts are big and they're factored into the budget.
Especially in college. In the NFL, they make so much off their TV deal and it gets spread evenly to the owners. The NFL could survive with 6 weeks of, no fans. The owners won't love it because they make a lot of individual money off that. But those colleges make everything on game day. They have TV deals, they have national deals if you're school in your conference with a national championship, whatever. But those gate receipts are enormous for college budgets. The NFL doesn't really care, so the NFL may push, okay, we'll do a couple weeks of no fans at games or limited attendance or whatever. College football can't survive that.
Yeah. So look, it's just going to be one of those things that we have to take week by week, month by month to see what happens. But that was announced today, and also all Indiana summer classes, I believe, are going to be online. So got that going too. So lots of disruption happening. And then the last note is Jeff Goodman ran a piece where I believe he got 334 coaches to give him their favorite movie and favorite TV show. Did you guys see this? Did you see what
I saw
Archie's favorite
answers, is? Yeah.
Archie, in addition to being the graphic, I don't know who that image was that they had his head superimposed on, sitting there eating chips and watching a show. It was good Photoshop work. But Archie's favorite movie is Kingpin, and his favorite TV show is Narcos.
Good choices.
Does that tell you anything about Archie Miller?
Kingpin's a classic.
Kingpin is a classic.
Yeah.
Tells you a little bit about his sense of humor. So Tom Crean answered his favorite TV show is The West Wing. His favorite movie is Remember the Titans.
West Wing was a good show.
Seems appropriate. Fran McCaffrey also had The West Wing as his favorite TV show, and Goodfellas as his favorite movie.
He just imagines when Joe Pesci's character gets whacked that it's an official.
Yeah, Fran McCaffrey has definitely done the Joe Pesci, do I amuse you, what am I, a clown, but actually meant it at somebody and snapped at somebody.
I like those choices by Fran, and it kind of made me mad because I don't want to like anything about Fran. I just don't. And I saw that on our run sheet, and I was like, dang, okay, good choices, Fran, still don't like you.
You're going to go to the next one, right?
Yeah,
Painter?
Matt Painter,
okay.
The Wire and Shawshank Redemption, which are
I really hate
classic choices.
I want to really dislike Matt Painter, but I think those would be my answers too. So it's like,
I mean, we can dislike Matt Painter because he's the Purdue coach, but I'm not surprised that he had. I'm not surprised that he had really sensible choices because when you listen to him talk about coaching, he's a sensible, smart coach.
No,
so
I don't dislike him as a person.
Sense.
I just he's the head coach of our rival. I want to hate him. It makes it hard.
I know. I know. All right. Any other news items jump out to you guys?
I will just say kudos to Coach Miller. He bought the IU police department some lunch the other day. whether you like Archie, don't like Archie, you do like to see people who are prominent and have the resources to be able to share in times like this, because as we know, the people on the front line are really, really the courageous people at the hospitals and the police and fire and all of that. I do like that when a coach of our program makes a gesture like that. And I'm sure that's happening around college athletics all the way, but I just want to make sure we mentioned that as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're welcome, Arch.
That is a great point, Coach.
Good
okay.
call.
Coming up, let's reflect a little bit on the never uninteresting career of Devonte Green, and we are going to do so by asking 3 lingering, perhaps even counterintuitive questions about his career and then discussing it. We will do that next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all here. We always appreciate you all being here. My wife laughed at me at dinner, said you guys can't possibly have anything to talk about.
We always find it.
I said we will prove you wrong. I was like, it's not really the subjects that we talk about. It's just getting everybody together.
It's not mid-August where we're like, what the hell are we going to talk about? For those who don't have the peek behind the curtain, there are some AC radio shows in the late summer where we're just like, I mean, what do we have? Because we've done a lot of shows over the years where we've covered we have nothing to talk about. Let's do our IU Mount Rushmore. We've done shows like that. So we got nothing left in that bin. So we always have to kind of find something. And there are, I would say, about 4 shows a year where I'm sitting here and I'm just like, there's no way we can get a show out of this. And we wind up doing it. But it's
find a way.
We'll be halfway through the first segment, and I'll be like, "We're done. It's over." We always find our way through.
Do a profile of chat mob members. Just get on and start talking about. Hey, here's what we think of Joel.
Chat mobbers.
Joel's this dude. He cooks well. He helps out at the tailgate.
What kind of drops could we get out of bringing Joel on here?
Oh my goodness!
You have to have the beat
drops that would become home field apparel T-shirts. That's
I would. You don't want.
I just pulled a bite
Jay on because Jay would just make this mediocre, and we're about really doing a good job. So Jay can't be on the show.
We'd lose some viewers, but some would pop in as well. It'd be pretty mediocre.
Yeah.
No, Joel would be fascinating now. Joel is a man of mystery.
He is a man.
We could have Joel and Megan on at the same show, and we wouldn't. You just have to hit play, and then
I just leave.
Yeah, you could just leave.
Joel and Megan, just let them take over the show.
Exactly.
Those two could
Joel,
talk
Megan, and Megan's mom.
It would be a 4-hour show, and it would be entertaining the entire time.
Oh man, that is funny.
But hey, there is an idea. We need to have Chat Mob send some short drops and see if we like them.
Just send them things to read. Just send them little clips.
That's
out of context things to read.
Speaking of that, so we have, and people have probably done this, and I need to go through and look at them. But we have these Chat Mob applications, and I'm putting the link in there because we do have to induct some new people into the Chat Mob and get them shirts, and then bring them on and do the post-show segments with them. So we do need to do that.
It's been a while since we've done that.
I know. So go there, and I'm sure if you've already done this, I apologize for getting behind, but I'll try to get caught up on them now that we're actually in the off season. But go to Assembly Call. Oh wait, I can't say this to the podcast folks because this is just for the YouTube folks. So I just put the link in the YouTube chat. So I'm sorry if you're listening on the podcast or on the radio. To be part of the Chat Mob, you got to be there, in the chat with the YouTube folks. So you got to show up live. So that's how it works. So anyway, Owen says when you run out of ideas, just have Coach eat a carrot.
I'm not. I'm done with carrots.
I'll eat yours, Coach. I'm a big carrot fan.
I know they're good for you, but
it's too bad the guy's name wasn't Pizza, and then you could be done with pizza, and it would be a healthier decision than getting rid of carrots.
Is that a fat joke?
No, I'm just saying, just in general, same thing, same thing for me.
Segment, Jerod's health tips for Coach Tonsoni. We want you around for when he finally hangs a banner. We don't want you to be not here in your unhealthy self.
Coach, how's parenting going this week? With you always mention your boys boys.
One came home just for 2 days, and we sent him back to his quarantine home in Carmel. with his wife, and then the other one's still here, and he sleeps till 10, sets his alarm, wakes up, and goes back to sleep until 1, then gets up, and he does go help one of his autistic clients 2 hours a day exercise. So that's his work, essential work, and then he comes home and then he sleeps some more. So he's really not too much of a pain.
Man, this stuff's gonna pass. He's just gonna sleep right through it. It'll be great.
I know. I guess if you're 21 and can't go anywhere, what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
Get caught up on sleep.
He is drinking my beer, though.
So we've been
quarantined. Is he replenishing it, though? Is he going
No.
Oh, well.
Not yet.
Well, yeah, we've been quarantined for my parents for a week, so we'll see him finally tomorrow. It's been a week since we've seen them, so it'll be good. I will not.
Can your mom bring some tiramisu?
I will not go over there and sleep, though, Coach. I promise you, I won't do that to my parents.
That's good. Jay said that home field needs to make him a mediocre shirt. I don't think home field is capable of making a mediocre shirt.
No, they're top notch.
You know what we should do? We should do some branded content on some of these shirts. I don't know how much it costs to get some made, but some of our most famous drops, maybe just like that.
That would be funny.
Yeah,
that would be funny. We talked about putting Coach's entire Purdue rant on there.
Just on the back, just
on the back, in small letters, the entire Purdue rant.
The front would be Assembly Call presents Tonsoni time, and then on the back, the entire rant.
You really show your ass. You show your ass when you do that.
It is still funny every time I listen to it.
I'm sorry. That's ridiculous. That's just not right. You can mischaracterize that all you want, chat mobbers.
Somebody in the chat said we should have a San Diego chicken bleep shirt too.
That would be good. Where's
San Diego chicken?
There it is. Oh man, hold that thought because someone did ask a Phil Rivers question for the.
Oh, nice.
I'm
happy to do a whole show on Phillip Rivers at some point.
Just a very short segment.
I'm saying if the off season gets rough, I'll do a scouting report, how he threw the ball last year, whatever you guys need.
10 reasons Phillip Rivers will be the best Colts quarterback of the last 2 decades.
2 decades? Maybe the last.
if you want to make it a hot take,
I think Peyton was a little better.
Maybe just a little bit. But do you think Luck was better?
I think Luck had the potential to be better. I think he struggled a lot in that offense that they had him in. He threw a lot of interceptions at one point, and he had a thing where he overthrew everybody. He threw it 5 yards over guys' heads. Luck had all the talent in the world and stuff like that. I also think that he struggled with football. It had nothing to do with his ability. I think that he just struggled with football from a physical standpoint. And from a mental standpoint, knowing how smart he is do I really want to be doing this a lot? And I think that when you're doing that, it hurts your performance. If you're questioning whether or not you should be out there, you shouldn't be out there. And I think that's why he retired ultimately when he did, is he just didn't want to do the work. He didn't have that burning desire to do the work to get back into it. And I think that's the right move. It's a smart move. The guy was hurt.
You can't do it halfway.
Yeah, he was hurt every season, it seemed like. And he played through a lot of injuries when he was younger that he never sat out for, And so I think he's amazing. He was a very talented guy. I thought he was the next Peyton Manning for sure. And that was before I knew he was going to the Colts. I just thought he was a phenomenally talented guy who had it all. I just think that once he got there and started getting hurt, it was No, I don't think that Rivers will be better than Luck. I think that he's a really good fit right now for what they need while they figure out a long-term solution.
To Indiana U Hoops, he says no way Rivers is the best QB for the Colts over the last 2 decades. I know. I was just kidding.
We know.
I was kidding. Okay.
The key for the Colts, one last thing, because people are discussing in the chat, the key for the Colts is protecting the quarterback, which they haven't done in a long time. It's getting an offensive line that can protect the quarterback. They got a good run-blocking offensive line. They need guys who can protect the quarterback. That's why Luck retired early, because he got murdered behind that offensive line. So whether it's Luck, Rivers, Brissett, whoever's back there, you got to protect them. So that's the thing.
You do. And now we'll even see. It's going to be interesting for some of the teams that have new quarterbacks too. How maybe not having a full offseason is going to affect them. So there's so much up in the air with sports right now. It's crazy. It is crazy. Okay, give me about 10 seconds, and then we will start this segment. just because it'll be easier for me to keep time if we start right on. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, y'all? It's Devonte Green giving you the green light to watch Assembly Call after every IU game. Just don't listen to their opinions about shot selection. Remember, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Devonte. Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcasts or watch those replays and see all of the Between Segment banner, then check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Jerod Morris here with Ryan Phillips and the coach Brian Tonsoni. And guys, I wanted to spend a little time just reflecting on Devonte Green's time at Indiana. And I wanted to try to frame this in maybe a little bit of a different way. And so I kind of thought of some lingering questions that, that we still have as Devonte's career has now ended. And obviously it's disappointing to all of us that we didn't get to see how it finished. If this simulation that is currently going on, if that's actually what would have happened, Devonte Green probably would have been 1,000-point scorer at Indiana, and obviously would have played in the tournament and probably, would have authored several more memorable moments. But obviously we know that he had a very up and down career. It was interesting, but it was interesting in good ways and it was interesting in bad ways. But let's ask these lingering questions, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on them. So the first question that I want to ask, and I'm going to kind of just take the devil's advocate position and argue what I think is maybe the counterintuitive position, and then see what you guys think. The first question is, are we going to miss Devonte more than we think next season? Because it has been easy for some people to say, hey, this guy's been really inconsistent. He was never able to kind of be the guy that maybe we all hoped he could be. So now, was he on the same page with his coach? All of these things. Will Indiana now be better without him? And what I would say, and Coach, you kind of alluded to this, is if you look at Indiana's biggest wins over the last 2 seasons, right? The Penn State game this year where he had 10 points. Iowa game, he has 27. Ohio State game, 19. Florida State game, 30. You go back to last season, the Michigan State game, 13 points, 4 assists. The other Michigan State game, 11 points, 5 assists. In a lot of Indiana's big wins, not all of them, but in a lot of them, he really carried a heavy load scoring-wise. And if you look at it this way, in terms of how many times a guy has scored 16 or more points against top 100 competition, Devonte did it 14 times in his career. Al Durham has done it 3 times. Rob Finney has done it once. Armand Franklin has done it once. Now, granted, Rob and Armand are still very young in their careers, and Devonte hadn't done it a ton before he was a junior or a senior. But the point is, as you look toward next season, who is going to be the guy, especially the guard, who steps up to score points in big games like Devonte could? Because for all of Devonte's faults, he is a guy that sometimes could just get red hot and carry Indiana, a team that didn't have much other guard scoring to lean on. Now, the flip side to this is that there are losses that might have become wins with more consistent production from Devonte. In the Purdue game, he scored 3 points. In the Rutgers game, he scored 0. In the Iowa game last year, he scored 5 that Indiana lost in overtime. In the 48-46 Purdue game, he scored 3. So that's the counter. But, Coach, do you think that we're going to miss him more than we think next season when we don't have that nuclear score to sometimes go out and win you a game?
Let me start by saying thanks, Devonte, for giving Indiana 4 years and for, the successes you had. We appreciate people who wear the Indiana uniform. And then the answer is no, we're not going to miss him. We used him, and he was used and played hard and did what he could do. It's time for him to move on, and we hope that he has a decent chance of playing overseas or someplace like that and can make some money on this awesome game. But we're going to fill that role with other people. It might be spread out. But some of the other things besides points were some of the reasons that fans and coaches were frustrated with him, whether it be the ball handling or some of the misplays on defense. And so when you solely look at points, that's just one of the many parts of the game of basketball. I think he was a scorer, and that's what he did. The other things he didn't do extremely well. And you will miss maybe the points a little bit. But but you'll fill that in with players that do some of the other things that he did not do. And so for me, I'm not going to miss him from the Indiana roster, other than the fact that, once you're a Hoosier, there's always a special place for me for playing for 4 years. But I think you pick up what he had basketball-wise somewhat easily next year.
Ryan?
Yeah, I was as hard on Devonte as anyone this year, and in some ways I regret some of the hyperbole about it. We got caught up in games just like everybody.
Were you? Because there were some people that were really hard on him. So
well, no, I mean okay. How about on a broadcast?
Okay,
channel.
All right, fine.
I looked back. I was looking back through Twitter at some of the things we've said about Devonte over the years, and I think when he was a freshman, a lot of us wanted him to play more because he could hit shots. And in that year, 16, 17, not a lot. He was a guy who could make things happen off the bench. He played all 32 games, started 3, averaged about 15 minutes a game. I remember, and he shot 43.5% from 3. And so we were all looking with anticipation to the development of Devonte Green. And I remember when he was recruited, one of the quotes he said was he wanted to be the best defensive player in college basketball. And we were all really excited about that because Tom Crean teams were not, did not rely on defense very much. And we were really looking for a defensive mindset. One of the things I think is interesting is I think that it's clear that Devonte had some of his signature moments this year. And the games he went off the most in, he hit threes in, but he only shot 35.8% from 3, which was down from 41% last year. So that tells you that in those big games, he was on fire. But when he was not on fire, it was the other end of the spectrum if his percentage went down.
He also had to take a lot of end of shot clock shots that hurt his percentage.
No, it's not all on him. It was a lot of the ways how he fit in the offense. I mean, here's the thing about Devonte. By last year, we knew what he was. I think there was a lot of wishful thinking that he's going to transform into this player that Archie Miller wants him to be, but he was who he was. And the fact that he couldn't fit into the system is as much on the coaching staff and the system as him. It just was a mismatched pair, I feel like, in a lot of ways. And whoever's fault that is, it doesn't matter. It's over now. But it just was a mismatched pair. And you could tell how frustrated it was for Archie because he saw the potential for greatness in Devonte, and we all saw it. You saw the Florida State game. You saw the Iowa game. I mean, that guy could go, as I've said before, he could go nuclear as fast as any player that I've seen in an IU uniform since I've been an Indiana fan. And it was really, really fun to watch when he did that. It was as exciting as watching anybody go off. It was like, for me and my fans, it was like Victor Oladipo on fire, doing crazy, amazing things, and Devonte as far as when they were going good. The difference was when things got bad, Victor offered you things and Devonte didn't as much. So I think that it's a good question. Will we miss him? In some moments where we need someone to hit a big shot and you don't feel like anyone's stepping up to it, maybe not. But if the trade-off is Devonte goes and you get Christian Lander, who's going to be a guy who can run a team and be a point guard and get people involved, I don't think we will. We'll miss him because, again, as Coach eloquently said, when a guy gives 4 years to your university, he's part of the family. He's allowed to come back. I hope we see him sitting behind the bench next year or wherever with all the other guys that come back. But on the same token, I think that what's going out, I think what we're bringing in is going to be better and better, a better fit certainly for the next level.
Okay.
He was a 3-point shooter. And I think of like Nick Zeisloff being able to hit threes and do some things and be that kind of shooter. But Zeisloff appreciated his role and understood his role. And I think both Devonte and all of us and the coaching staff needed Devonte to be a little bit more than what he was, which was just a 3-point shooter. He was our best person to score. And so when he scored, we're in games and winning games. When he didn't score, it was a big struggle. And I know we have Trace Jackson Davis inside, and I know that's your best option. But really, at the beginning of the year, I thought he was going to be Indiana's closer. And I talked a lot about that on the last show when we did our Final Four picks of the bracket, about how I like to pick the closers, the guy that can just get you buckets in tight situations, not dependent on offense. And he never was able to do that. And I think he wanted to be that. We wanted him to be that. But what he really was a guy just to hit spot up threes and hit 3 or 4 of them in big games, and then go to somebody else and play other people. And I think, what we needed Devonte to do, he really couldn't do, but he wanted to. And I think that was some of the problems last year with Romeo and him, between Romeo and him, that Devonte wanted to be the guy, but he just didn't play in a fashion that allowed him to be the guy. And that was part of the offensive struggles, because there really wasn't anyone else. You could shut down Trace Jackson-Davis by double teaming quick off the ball, forcing him to kick the ball out. You needed that other scorer, and Indiana did not have that. So, that's where I think sometimes it's not fair for Devonte. And jumping ahead, I don't want to take away your last question there. He was a shooter. And, he wasn't a scorer, and Indiana needed him to be a scorer, and I think that's a little bit unfair for me and everyone else to judge him. But, when you're offered that opportunity, you do one of two things. You step up and you do it, or you don't, and I don't believe that he did. I'm not saying he didn't try, but he just obviously did not become the lead dog in the IU offense.
Yeah, and for the record, as far as my answer goes, I tend to agree with what both of you said. I would side more on that side. That I think on the net, I think there will be a net positive. Like, I think on balance, it'll just be because it wasn't such a good fit between he and Archie. I think for that reason alone, it could help. But that brings us to the second question, which is, do you guys think that as a fan base we were fair to Devonte Green? I think we were on this show. Certainly, we certainly tried
for the most part.
Yeah, but because when you look at it, Devonte was recruited by Tom Crean to play in a very open offense that valued shooting and could live with turnovers, could live with poor shot selection and streaky defense, which were all of the bad things Devonte brought to the table. And if you look at his high school scouting reports, and we talked about this before, it is to a T what he was at Indiana. And so you could say, well, it would have been nice if he would have improved and this, that, and the other, but a basketball player to a certain level, his instincts are what they are. And that's the guy that Indiana recruited, even if it wasn't Archie who recruited him. And so, he was who he was projected to be. And so he gets here, Crean gets fired, in comes a coach who installed a much different system that was not as geared toward Devontae's strengths. And he didn't have a lot of backcourt help around him. Kind of to your point, Coach, he was being asked to do something that he probably wasn't really well suited to do. He and the coach clearly had their clashes. But still, at the end of 4 years, he was a 3-star recruit who ended up scoring almost 1,000 points and was the best player on the court in some of Indiana's biggest wins over the last 2 years. So, I understand the disappointment and the frustration during his career, but I really feel like by any objective measure, you would have to say his time at Indiana was a success, given what his high school pedigree was and then what the production was. Now, if you want to grade on some kind of curve because this wasn't a great era of IU basketball and he played more minutes than maybe he would have on good Indiana teams, and so the production numbers shouldn't count as much, like I get there's some shades of gray in there. But again, just given what he was as a recruit, what he produced, that's pretty successful. And when you factor in the difficulty of having to play 3 years for a coach that you don't really fit into his system, I wonder if enough thought was given to that in the knee-jerk reactions in a game when people got mad at him. And obviously not, because it's a knee-jerk reaction, but I hope as we step back and look at that, we can still acknowledge the mistakes and the faults, Coach, as you did, but maybe have a little bit more empathy for, some of the challenges he faced and the fact that he is who he was as a player, and it just wasn't a very good fit overall.
Yeah, and the other thing, though, is he was a lightning rod, and whether this is true or not, you'll never know because we're not there, and you always got to be fair, and coaching guys as well, you don't want people to badmouth them there, but there was rumors to be problems between he and Romeo. There was the suspension for a selfish act, and I know that happens across college basketball, and their suspensions, but if you really are into a program, you don't get yourself suspended. And then there were former players that were hinting that that he might be part of the struggle of the team. So there's some smoke there. Whether there's fire or not, no one will fairly understand that. But that's why I would say he stuck it out, which is good with the coaching change. He did win some big games, and you remember that. But I do think it could have turned out better overall for Devonte Green. And I'm trying to be as respectful.
Fair enough. Yeah.
I think that the big issue here was if Devonte Green was who he was offensively, obviously the turnovers wouldn't have been okay with Archie. But if he played defense the way that he was capable most of the time, I think that Archie would have lived with it. And the problem was that when Devonte would get going offensively, he could sometimes lock in defensively and be a pest defensively and be a solid on-ball defender and just an absolute pest. The problem was those times were few and far between because, he had to get going offensively. Now, there were games where he played well defensively, but it was so streaky. And I think that was what frustrated Archie and why he was removed from the starting lineup was because the other guys, Rob Finney, at least for the most part, plays defense. Al Durham, God love him, he tries to play defense. He's not a great on-ball defender, but you get effort from him. And I feel like that was the big issue there. And then Justin Smith had games where he looked as good as any defender in the Big Ten and had other games where he didn't, but he played a different position. And I feel like with Devonte, if he had just played defense the way he was capable, maybe he's incapable of playing consistently. Like, I don't know if that's just a trait to his game or, where you get high highs and low lows. But I do think he's a guy who, when he was on fire, was great on both ends of the floor. It wasn't just an offensive guy. He could be great on both ends of the floor. And we saw that, and it helped win us games. But on the other end, it was just an inconsistency. And I think and Devontae's acknowledged that in post-game pressers. He acknowledged it, that he's just inconsistent. And hopefully heading into the next level, he can figure that out and lock in, because he's certainly talented enough, and he's got enough innate talent to be a really good, consistent offensive threat and a pretty good on-ball defender.
Yep. Okay. And Ryan, that leads to the third lingering question, which is, will Devonte Green ever play in the NBA? Now, I know that everybody's immediate reaction is going to be to say no and give this 0% chance of happening. Let me just argue the other side, just to play devil's advocate, because the cons are easy. He doesn't have the ideal size. His decision-making is suspect. He hasn't shown good instincts in transition. He's good at a bunch of stuff offensively, but he's not really elite at anything. I get all the reasons why he's probably not going to play in the NBA. But he is good at some things that are valued in today's NBA for bench players. He's a good, albeit streaky, outside shooter. He's actually a pretty good isolation scorer. He's a good pick-and-roll ball handler. He does have irrational confidence that could make him valuable as a scorer off the bench, and he can defend when he wants to, if he's motivated. Plus, this is just a fact. His name and bloodlines will get him looks that others might not get. And, just if you compare him to his brother, his college numbers are a step below, but not totally out of line with what Danny Green did. Now, Danny was 6'6" and an all-conference defender, so there are differences.
Played with some of the best players of their era, too.
Yes, but, also what could his game look like in an offensive system more tailored to it? Because we haven't really seen that. So, again, it is unlikely, but Ryan, do you give it any, if you had to place a percentage chance on it at all, do you think that there's even a remote possibility that he someday plays in an NBA game, or do you think that that's just totally bonkers?
1% chance.
Okay.
He might play summer league, and he might play in the G League. I think he'd fit really well overseas because of his offensive skill set.
Yeah.
Again, if he finds consistency, but his size kind of makes it difficult. And that's my major concern is his size. And it's not at his size. He's an elite athlete who can go up and get, he's an okay athlete. But his innate offensive ability, if he can find a way to harness that, I think he could go over and play and be very successful in Europe if he finds the right league and the right team and the right situation. I mean, we've seen former Indiana guys do that and have a lot of success. And I think that's possible for him if he can iron out the problems in his, iron out the problems with consistency. And
be mature. One of the things of guys who really succeed overseas is there's a maturity about them, because I think that's a difficult life. And so I think, for him kind of growing up just a little bit more, I think would help him. But he's certainly got the talent and the ability. So if he has the desire, I think those opportunities will be there. I agree. I don't think the NBA is likely. Again, I'm trying to argue kind of the opposite side of it. But I think there's maybe a few more things there in his bag that he brings to the table than maybe people would assume, to give him a chance at the professional ranks.
Do you think he's in lines of like Verdell Jones and Troy Williams, those people who had up and downs? You either loved him one game, didn't like him another, and both of those guys seem to be more respected once they left the program, and you look back on what those two guys brought, or is Devonte below that?
It's different. Level? I think it's different. He's certainly not on Troy's level as a player overall, and it's different because those guys were part of successful teams. So you link them. Verdell, was part of that 2012 team that brought things back. And Troy, despite his ups and downs, was really good in helping Indiana get a Big Ten title. And Devonte didn't have that, but I do think as people reflect on his career and we get further removed from it, I think the thoughts on it will be more fond than they were in the fog of battle while we were going through it.
Agree fully. I think that like that Florida State game, I mean, I watched it again the other day just for fun because we don't have any sports to watch. So I watched that back and that was entertaining as heck. Like it was fun. Watching him go off in that game was thrilling and it was fun. I've watched the Iowa game back before. I watched that on my flight out to New York actually a couple weeks back just because I was looking through some IU stuff and getting ready for the Big Ten tournament. And I watched the Iowa game again. And I was sort of like, what did we do in this game to like play well? And, you know, watching him just bury 4 straight threes is, I mean, like that's thrilling. That as a fan, you love those moments. And he has some of those moments, you know, that make it a fond memory. He didn't win a Big Ten title. He didn't have, he didn't make he didn't have the assist on the watch shot or anything like that. But he had these really fun moments where everybody was just kind of like, wait, Devonte did that, and sort of the yes, or no, yes shots. And I do think people will look back on that somewhat fondly. You tend to remember the good more than the bad. It's
easier for the 0 for 5 games to just fade because there was nothing that memorable about them, but you're going to remember him making 6 threes in the game.
The bad memories tend to fade as far as like individual performances go.
Yeah. All righty. Well, good discussion, gentlemen. Good to reflect on Devonte. I'm sure we'll do one of these on Duran as well. But to echo what you said, Coach, we thank Devonte for his time as a Hoosier and certainly wish him luck. And we'll be following along his career wherever it leads. And certainly his legacy on this show will probably be the best intro that we have because that one is really funny.
One of the best drops we've ever had. So Devonte, Hall of Famer in that category, my friend.
Yes. All right. Coming up in our third segment, we are going to answer your questions. We have a mediocre question that reflects on Indiana's mediocre last 2 decades. And yes, a listener made the mistake of asking Ryan a question about Phillip Rivers, so we'll have to listen to his answer about that. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right, 22:02 for that segment. That is good. Coach, do you have any lingering thoughts on hosting a show with Ryan and Scott?
Oh, it was fantastic. Those are my kind of dudes, because they're all in. They're all in, and
they are all in, man.
They're not afraid to say what they think. They're not wishy-washy, and yet they're not like, some people that just say stupid stuff on the air, and I'll refrain from saying that person's name, but I have mad respect for those two.
I'm feeling.
Wait, are you referring to someone on the show?
Yeah, friend of the show, but
no, the guy who's a big fan of the show.
Oh, okay,
big fan of the show.
Real big fan of the show.
No.
Okay,
and so
all right. I thought that was a shot at Andy.
No. Although
Andy's
hat's choice this week has been kind of questionable at best.
Sheriff Bottoms.
He's doing the dad thing well, and I'm proud of that for Andy. But boy, he looked a little goofy on those.
Never judge a man by the things that he gets photographed doing as a dad with daughters.
No,
that's off limits. Off limits.
But no, it was great, and I really like Scott and his passion, and I like Ryan. As I've said over and over again, I think it's just great to get on. The problem was like manning the board and everything, and watching the time just keep going and going and going, and not knowing. And then
You're allowed to
interrupt.
step in and stop us.
I couldn't. There's no way I could stop in. I just kind of had to wait for a little bit of a lull, and I had to kind of the timing. But no, it was a lot of fun. I thought it was a great job, and those rewatches are really much needed for our fan base. And
I have to say, I was really kind of sketchy on the project. I wasn't sure how fun it was going to be. I thought it was going to make me want to miss the tournament. But once the game got going, I kind of got into it.
Yeah.
I just thought it was going to be like, man, we're looking back. I wish there was a game right now. But I actually really got into it. I had a lot of fun watching it. And again, some of these games, I do remember watching that IU LSU game back when I was a kid, at a friend's house. Because we all were enamored with Shaq, and he was such a big personality and such a transcendent player. But I remember also being really impressed with Calbert Chaney in that game as a kid and became kind of a Calbert fan. And it was one of those things where I thought am I going to enjoy doing this or not? But I really got into it. I had a blast. So,
man, no one is as excited for that project as Scott. He is so excited to do it because I sent out the original email, and I forgot to put him on it. Because I emailed Galen and I emailed Chris, and Galen immediately sent it to Scott, and I got a text from Scott like 30 seconds later calling me out for not including him on it, and like, dude, are you mad at me? Like, what? What's going on? He's like, I've been wanting to do this for years. This is so. I mean, he is so excited to do this. Which
you could tell.
You could definitely tell. Like, he was ready to go, man.
I had a question. Had Scott ever been on Assembly Call before?
No, that was his first time.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
We've been on his show, but yeah, he'd never been on. We talked about doing it, and then the scheduling never worked. So yeah, it was good to get him on.
Funny
here.
That like for years we've obviously had not like a partnership, but like a friendship with obviously Galen, who comes on our show all the time, and Crimson Cast, and we've kind of like paralleled them for years and been buddies with them. But like the fact that he's never been on the show, I mean, it was because it's one of those things where we talk about them so much. I was like, at some point in the was 700 shows or was it 600 shows we've done?
Yeah,
estimated 600 shows we've done. Like he has to have come on one time, and he never had. And that surprised me.
Yeah.
The one problem I did have, Jerod, is to be in the 1992 show, you put me with a sixth grader and a sophomore in high school.
Yeah. I was in sixth grade.
It's kind of hard to stay in a bit.
Well, also Ryan just refused to do it from his opening statement, so that didn't help very much.
Well, it was weird to do.
Yeah, it's weird. Of course, it's weird.
I kind of wanted to do like a little bit of a comparison. Then I kind of got into it. I kind of got into it midway through the first segment.
Yeah, just totally refused to do it off the top, but then you.
Well, know what? It was that team. There was such a dichotomy from the last couple of years that I had to mention it because that team was just attacked and just knew, and so I had to mention something because it was like from my perspective, like I don't remember watching that, so I have a different perspective on Indiana basketball than you guys, and I watched Indiana basketball when I was growing up and everything, from afar, but I didn't see every game. I saw the big games, and so I had to mention just. Man, there was something about those guys where they just they were so focused. They were in attack mode. They figured out how to attack and they just relentlessly attacked and made the defense stop them. And they had a plan and they each were.
Yes.
The thing that shocked me, it wasn't that they had a plan because every team has a plan. Whether or not they executed is the question. It was that everybody was on the same page about what to do about that plan. And that was so different to me. And it's different than modern college basketball. It is. There's so many individual players who are individual players and who freelance and do this and do that. That team had a game plan and just relentlessly attacked they attacked the same spot for like 20 possessions in a row.
Yeah.
No selfishness, just that whoever was in that spot on the baseline, they just gave it to him. And it was relentless, and it would that. So I had to. I know you love this project and you wanted to do it that way, but I had to mention that just it's so different than what I was used to. It's
amazing when everybody's on the same page and does what the plan is.
It really is, and it makes basketball look so much easier. It really does.
And that's the thing about watching that team is you're watching all five guys on the same page, but that have high basketball IQs.
Yep.
And what an offense can look like when every player on the court can hit a 15-foot jump shot. It opens up everything.
And when everybody on the court is playing for the guy next to him too.
Yes.
Like there was Calvert had 30, but he got that 30 within the offense. It wasn't like they were just feed Calvert, let him
Bob Knight's offense always had a featured scorer. Like that's just how it was,
But it was,
and he was that guy.
He was getting the ball within the scheme of the offense, and he wasn't afraid to give it up. And it's not like, and that was the dichotomy for me, which was what LSU was doing, was just feed Shaq and let him go to work, and everybody else back off. And that was give it to Calvert. Calvert kicks it out, reposts, moves around, gets it back. He was taking his opportunities as they came, not demanding the ball, catching it, and going one-on-one on somebody. It was through the offense, and that was so impressive. So. I thought it was I had a blast watching it. It was fun to watch. Pretty basketball. That was pretty basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, Shaq was fun to watch too.
Rewatch did for me. I remembered where I was at. I was engaged at the time, and we had a couple's wedding shower on that day, and I actually went instead of watching the game. I remember watching the game while the couple shower was going on. If that happened now, Mrs. Tonsoni's going by herself. No way I'm missing Indiana in the tournament now.
Yeah, but I mean, you do different when you're engaged, when you're first dating. You're willing to make some sacrifices. You know,
I know, but this is Indiana. This isn't any other place. I mean,
I know, but it's your future wife. That's what I mean. But that's how you know. That's how you know she's the one, because you'll miss an Indiana game for her. That's how you know.
I was soft.
No, that's not soft. I give you a total pass on that. You get a pass.
Hey, I missed an Indiana game for my girlfriend this year. It's I'm not soft. Watch it, Tonsoni.
Hey, I do. Next time,
soft for missing it.
The next time we have although there was an epic story that happened at this wedding shower, I cannot say over the air.
I can't wait till we're in Bloomington next time.
Next time
we're
in Bloomington,
okay.
I will tell the core guys, and then everyone who hangs around till 2 or 3 in the morning, I'll probably let it slip. I did not tell. Something happened, and I did not tell a soul for close to 7 years.
Oh boy!
Wow.
Yeah, and I finally told Amy, and then slowly the story has come out, and yeah. So,
wow.
Now everybody's intrigued.
Jim, we got to get there as soon as airlines start running.
Yeah,
we got to get there.
By the way, Joel with the best point. Who schedules a wedding in March?
It's a fair point.
Fair point.
Wait, was it in Indiana?
Fair point.
Was it in Indiana, Coach?
Yes.
Who scheduled? Yeah, an Indiana wedding in March. What?
Yeah.
No, our wedding wasn't in March.
Not you. The one.
Yeah, the shower.
The wedding shower.
Wedding shower.
Yeah.
For Amy and I.
Oh, okay. The shower. Okay.
Yeah. So we got married in June, but no. Moose is in the chat. He just and his fiance said yes a while back, and so he's got to make sure to plan away from
plan around basketball season.
Plan around basketball season.
You got to do what you got to do.
All right.
Do what you got to do. All
off.
right, let's go to the mailbag. Just give me 15 seconds and we will start the next segment. All right, here we go. Get everything set up. Okay, let's get through as many of these questions as we can. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, this is Deron Davis. And what's the only thing better than dominating a Duke big man in the post? Is celebrating with friends afterwards. Join Jerod, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Hall call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Deron. Welcome back to the Assembly Hall call. I am Gerard Morris here with Ryan Phillips and the coach, Brian Tonsoni. Remember that you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, even during the offseason, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. And again, I'm not making fun of Deron when he does that. We have all done the Assembly Hall call thing before, and I used to be called Gerard all the time in high school basketball introduction. So I'm just used to it. It's cool. All right, guys, time for our mailbag. All these questions submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community at assemblycall.com/community. The first question.
It's not that good, but it's not that bad. It's Jay's mediocre question.
So Jay's mediocre question is, who were the best IU players to never make a Sweet 16? A very sad and depressing question, but I did do the research on this. So the field expanded to 16 teams in 1951. So every team that made the tournament then would have made the Sweet 16. But in 1975, it expanded to 32. So at that point, you had to win a game to make the final 16. Since that point in time, here is the list of the best players who have not made a Sweet 16 or who never made a Sweet 16. Andre Patterson, A.J. Guyton, Michael Lewis, Luke Recker, Kirk Haston, Bracy Wright, Marshall Strickland, D.J. White, Robert Vaden, Marco Killingsworth, Eric Gordon, Verdell Jones, Noah Vonleh, James Blackman Jr., and Devonte Green and Deron Davis. Verdell Jones and James Blackman Jr. have asterisks because their teams made it, but they were injured, so they never actually got to play in a Sweet 16. Their teams did make it.
Verdell Jones was
but they didn't actually get to play in it, so I just wanted to point that out. But and then obviously Romeo Langford didn't as well. No one and done has made it, and you'll also notice that for that early part of the Bob Knight era, going to a lot of Sweet 16s. A lot of Elite
Yeah.
Eights back then. So all those players, if they stayed around, made at least one of them.
My pick's DJ White. He won Big Ten Player of the Year and never went, and was on some teams that were actually pretty good.
He and Haston and Guyton are probably the best of that bunch.
Yeah, those are the three.
I mean,
would
Gordon
say,
is obviously
for
the best player of all of them, but
yeah,
he was on
but he was
1 year.
One and done. But no, DJ, they were on that team. Mike Davis's last team had a lot of hype before the season, and then DJ got hurt and didn't play the rest of the year, really. He tried to come back. He hurt his foot, tried to come back. Had he played, that team would have gone pretty far in the tournament, and, history might be a little different now. But, yeah, I would put DJ certainly right there with A.J. Guyton and Haston.
All right,
you
Ryan.
Look at those top three, Patterson, too, and Lewis. Those guys gave a lot to Indiana and didn't get to the Sweet 16. That's kind of tough for those guys.
Yep. All right, Ryan. This is from James. Ryan's player breakdown of Phillip Rivers. This is a Colts question, but the radio show is on in Indianapolis, so we can. Well, there's now finally a use for your San Diego knowledge.
I mean, look, let's remember they moved to Los Angeles, so I haven't watched as closely as I used to. I've seen them on Red Zone basically because I have disavowed the Los Angeles Chargers. They don't exist as far as I'm concerned. But Rivers had a really good 2018 when he was mildly protected. Then everybody got hurt this year, and he played poorly. A lot of playing from behind, a lot of trying to go downfield to make something happen type stuff. They didn't have a great running game. And it was a lot of 50-50 balls to his receivers. You do that, you're going to throw interceptions. That's just the way it is, especially when you don't have a good offensive line. You're throwing off your back foot. I think with a good offensive line that the Colts have, and they add maybe another weapon in the draft, I think that he's going to have a pretty successful year. I think he'll be better than Jacoby Brissett was this year for sure. And you guys will love having him be your quarterback. I will say that. He's a great guy.
Yeah. Well said. Coach, Jeffrey wants to know, is there optimism over whether the Hoosiers can be a top 5 team in the conference next season? I know you're trying to be cautious with your optimism, but what do you think about that?
I think, a lot just depends on who stays and who reclassifies and all of that. But, yeah, I think Indiana can be a top 5. But really, you look at like Ohio State and Michigan this year, they were 7th and 8th in the league. At the end, and they were going to get 5 seeds, 6 seeds. So it's really hard to tie conference into the ultimate goal of making the NCAA. And we want to be a top 5 basketball program. So I think that needs to be the goal. And I think that the team is set that if they all advance in the off season, which they're going to lose some off-season work together with this shutdown. So that's a concern too. But I do think the roster's better, and it just depends on the makeup of the Big Ten. But I definitely see the top half, 7th or better, being a pretty good choice for the Indiana Hoosiers.
All right, and then last question that we'll have time for, at least for the radio audience. Sammy Jacobs from Hoosier Huddle wanted 5 questions that you have for Scott Dolson regarding the basketball program. Might not have time to get to 5, but Coach, what would be the number 1 question that you would ask Scott Dolson about basketball?
Man, that's just really tough because I would probably ask him, what is his main guideline on success of the program year by year? Where does he expect it to be in year 4 and year 5? And how will he know to either extend or not? I know he's not going to show his cards and answer that question, but that's one I think a lot of us would like to know so we could monitor it going forward. Maybe privately, if you traded him the wedding story that you told us in the last break, maybe he might make that trade. Ryan, quickly, what question would you ask Scott Dolson? 5 seconds.
I want to know future of the facilities. Are they going to continue to upgrade all facilities constantly and have that? Are they going to look to, I know people love Assembly Hall and we just got to redo, but are they going to look to maybe look what that would look like long term? I'm talking like 10 years.
You're always ready to throw Assembly Hall.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
All right, that is going to do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thank you to Bob Thompson for producing a lot of the music that you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We'll be back. Andy will be back to talk with you tomorrow night for the rewatch of the IU Louisville Sweet 16 game from '93. Until then,
take it from me, native Hoosier Mark Titus. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
I
thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Here I come. This is Don Sony.
All right. Here, let's roll through the rest of these questions.
We should get a branded shirt that's the elbows in and the eyes on the rim.
We should. I was talking with Jordan Hulls and with Home Field about doing one of those with like a little Jordan Hulls silhouette on it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Like the logo, basically.
Yeah, that fell by the wayside at the end of the season, and obviously we're not going to do it now. But we need to.
I mean, it's a way to do some extra stuff and fans.
Yeah. No, we do want to do that though.
One more question there for Sammy. I'd like to ask about the fan experience. What kind of direction, both in basketball and football, is he going to take the fan experience? I know in sitting with Chris for IU Artifacts and stuff, there are times when I know you need revenue streams, and especially now with the loss of the tournament, you're probably not going to go a different way, but there seems times where some of that kills the vibe of a big run with 5 minutes to go, and then you have a credit union jingle, or you have some game there. And I know that marketing is a tough thing, and I think IU does a decent job, but both Sammy and I talk about this all the time in football. There needs to, the game and the game atmosphere and the music and the band all need to be, I think, really centered towards building that atmosphere back. And I still think Assembly Hall is a great place to be, but I think it's lost some of that mojo in almost, unless it's just a really big game. And I wonder if he had any ideas on how to keep the revenue going and yet make it about the game and not the revenue streams.
Look, one of the biggest arguments in favor of keeping Assembly Hall how it is, keeping what we have right now for Assembly Hall, in addition to just tradition and like all of those things, is that because of how the acoustics are and how it's laid out, it's really intimidating. And it literally, the building should and often does give Indiana a massive advantage. The teams recently just have not taken advantage of it. And if they're not going to do that, to me, that really does lessen the argument for why you would, just absolutely keep Assembly Hall and not even listen to other arguments like some people have been in the past. But, hopefully that's something that comes back with this team where that is a real asset, where it's like, holy crap, playing a game here is insane because of just how crazy this place is set up.
And I hate to say this, but in our coverage of the Purdue basketball, that place is insane 30 minutes before the game, and it could be some random team in December, and everyone's up and clapping and in their seats at the start, and there's really not a lot of fluff. It is all basketball. And boy, if they go on an 8-0, 10-0 run, you can't hear yourself think for 2 minutes during that timeout. It's not, a free throw shooting contest and that. And I know, again, it's all about revenue. I know those things draw revenues and sponsors, and that's very important. So I'm probably speaking about what I don't know, but man, there is some places where atmosphere is good, and winning helps. I mean, winning would help that too. So it's not just the athletic department. You got to win consistently to get people to want to show up against Texas, Corpus Christi or whatever that is.
Here's my problem, as it's always been. Crispy. Here's my problem.
Christi.
Here's my problem with Assembly Hall in the modern world we live in. Okay. It used to be that people go to basketball just because it's basketball, and they were going to go, and it's Indiana basketball, and they're going to pack the place. If you don't have good seats now as a student, or, as a student, I'm saying, not if you own season tickets, you're going to go. But as a student, if you don't have good seats, why not go to a bar and have fun and watch it, so the balcony's empty half the time. That's a problem, and it's a waste of space, and it's a waste of seats. I think they should build something similar to Assembly Hall. I think it should be all four sides, though, and I think it should be steep like that, where you're right on the, you feel like you're right over the floor because of how steep those stairs are. But you got to get rid of the balcony. And you can't in the current facility. There's no way to get rid of that in the current facility without knocking out a ton of seats and knocking out a ton of your revenue. The problem is, though, is that like the balcony is a waste. I mean, like other than the first 3 rows, you don't have a good seat. And there are so many seats throughout Assembly Hall that are really bad seats. And it's not a great place. It's a great place to experience college basketball. It's not a great place to watch a college basketball game.
It's a good distinction.
Yeah. And that's my concern, is that Indiana can do better than that. You can create a great atmosphere. And by the way, the atmosphere, I believe, is going to go with the fans. Yes, there's acoustics and all that stuff. Bring in the best people in the world. This is Indiana basketball. Bring in the best people in the world to figure out how to magnify those acoustics, how to do that, forget it. Bring in people to tell you if it's possible to recreate that. If it's not, okay, we stick with Assembly Hall for a while.
And unfortunately, a sad thing, Ryan, where you're correct, is am I going to pay money to go sit in a balcony or sit in row 45 underneath the balcony when I can watch it
perfect with a perfect view
TV,
at home?
And that's not just Indiana basketball. That's a lot of football.
Of course.
People
You're
are saying, hey, every game is
drop
on TV. Attendance is dropping all over the place in a lot of different sports. And so that's just something I'd want, I'd be willing to ask Scott to see what he has, his ideas. And it's a long-term type of time.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I remember back in the day when Rick Greenspan was the athletic director, and I know he gets a lot of bad press from, or not press, but gets a lot of bad shots from Indiana fans because of the Kelvin Sampson hire and some other things that happened there. He's the one who got the board of trustees to agree to upgrade the facilities. That's how you get Cook Hall. That's how you get the baseball and softball complex. That's how you get the enclosure of the stadium. All of that came from Rick Greenspan. And one of the things they agreed to was to build a new basketball arena. And the reason why is he saw what was coming, which is, why would you go to a game if you don't have a good seat? Yeah, you'll go to the Duke game when the atmosphere is going to be crazy and it's like a party. But are you going to go to the Rutgers game mid-season, if you don't have a good seat? I mean, that's the long-term view of this, is that fewer people are going to games. So you need to give them a reason to get in the stadium and or the arena or, whatever it is. So I think that
not too many people sneak in a loaded bag full of whiskey to sit in the balcony anymore when they're in college.
Poor Rutgers, man. Still the default crappy team that people pull out for their examples. I guess Rutgers will actually have to make a real NCAA tournament before that stops.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I just think that there's ways to do it where, I mean, here's the thing, is that other schools have newer arenas than we do and have great arenas. You can build a new arena that's great. It doesn't have to be, just because we have a good situation as far as acoustics go, you can't replicate that somewhere else. I was talking with Jay Billis about this, and he said, yeah, I wouldn't F with it. Like because I asked him a couple Indiana questions on the side during one of our interviews, and he was just like, yeah, I wouldn't mess with it because it's so unique and it's so amazing. But he only comes for the big games when it's packed. I mean, there are games throughout the year on like a Tuesday when you're playing Penn State, Penn State was good this year, but you're playing a random team who, Nebraska or whatever, who isn't a great basketball program. You're not going to get the attendance you did.
It was a great casual name drop right there.
I know. I tend to do it. I've gotten
really
better
good.
at it.
No, that was good. That was really good. Okay, so let's hit one, maybe two more questions. I love you guys, but my daughter's up at my parents' house. I got to save some time to spend with the wife this evening. So
yeah, I got to get out too. We got to order dinner.
But I do. So there's a couple more. So if we don't answer your question this week, I will save these and roll them over into next week. We'll get to them because these are really good questions, but they're not really timely, so we can do them any week. But Coach, I do want to get to this. JD asks, can you explain your coaching history? He also said he'd be curious to hear the schools you've coached at, and he's heard the origin story of the show, but what is your origin story for how you got started listening and eventually being on the show?
Yeah, I've been coaching. I started coaching at Lebanon High School as an assistant, 8th grade freshman, and then varsity assistant for 4 years. First head coach job was at a small school called Northfield High School in Wabash, Indiana. We won in the year 5. We won the sectional and a regional. We're one game away from state championship in 2003. Got beat by Lewis Cass, the state champions in the semi-state. And then ran into a school board situation after that, and I stayed as an assistant in the same county at Wabash for a guy who is coaching in St. X in Cincinnati right now. He was over in at Wabash, and he's had the Cumberland kid that plays at Cincinnati. He's had some kids make the Packers. So I was an assistant for 2 years and then got back into head coaching at Delphi for 4 years, 1, 2, 6, 8, and 10, and then a school board member didn't like that my son was going to be playing as a freshman, and I got into a situation there. So I resigned and moved my kid to another school where he went and scored 1,300 points for the rival school against the school that let me go.
Take that to the school board.
and then I helped 1 year with my son at Rossville, and then I went back with my former assistant 3 years at Western. So that's my career path. As far as the show, I think I saw it on social media, and I went and watched the show, and that's back when you didn't have a chat room or anything, but you took questions on the YouTube comments, and I typed a question in, and you answered it that very first time I typed it in, and I thought it was a good discussion, and I just kept coming back and kept asking questions. And I think your guys were like, hey, if he's going to be back here, let's put him to work. And so you asked me to monitor the live, what was it, the app that you had to cover it live.
Yeah, that's right.
You were doing cover it live, and you wanted a moderator in there to keep the comments going. And so you asked me as well as some other people, and I was there on a regular basis. And I interviewed Jerod once for my class, and he talked about what you do to bring value to the places where you work. And he says you just bring value first, and if you are valuable, then you'll be asked to do other things. So all I did was show up on a regular basis and do what Jerod needed. And then I think they got to know me and asked me to be on as a guest once. And I probably said some really stupid things that could have been drops. And maybe one person emailed him and liked it. So then he kept coming back to the well. And then about last year, they asked me to be on call as a regular member. And I'm very thankful. It is one of the best things. I've won a lot of games. Obviously, my family is obviously number one, but coaching is a thrill. But being a part of this organization is one of the better things that's ever happened in my career. As I transition out of teaching into some more stuff in retirement, it's given me something to look forward to. So I'm forever grateful to all the guys for that opportunity.
Well, hey, we're lucky to have you, Coach.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things that just clicked as soon as you came on the show, because you kind of fit a few things that we didn't have, which was a perspective of having seen, more of the great IU teams play, which, even though Andy and I kind of grew up watching the early 90s teams play, they didn't hang a banner. We don't really remember the 87, the 81, the older teams, and you experience that. And having an actual coaching background lends a lot of credibility, gravitas to what you say. And just personality-wise, you've got a personality that fits, because that makes a big difference in a show like this. Any type of podcast, chemistry among the hosts is so important, So you can dish it out and you can take it, which is obviously a prerequisite for being here. And I
try not to show my ass too many times on the show. You show your ass when you do that.
It's gonna happen eventually.
But no, man, it fits, and we are really lucky to have you. It's it is it's I don't know. Sometimes there's just serendipity with the way that things happen, and so
yeah,
we're
you
really
have
lucky.
to. When you join a show like this where we all make fun of each other so much, some people don't get that, and it's hard on them to sort of get that, like, we all love each other, but break each other's balls all the time, and it's just that's our love language, basically, and it's hard
the chemistry that the three of you have.
It's hard for people to fit in, and get that, and Coach totally falls right in line, and if anything, makes fun of himself more than the rest of us.
I always love how when Ryan tells that story, he's like, "But we all love each other." And then he groups himself in that. It's like a defense mechanism.
We do, right, guys?
Ryan's wrong.
No, we do.
No, we love the listeners. We don't love each other. We hate each other. We get off this. We never talk to each other outside of this. I just show up every week at the same time.
Oh, man. But that would be awful if you watched a show like this one where we're on here, and I feel like we certainly seem like we like each other and have fun, and then if off air we just really did hate each other.
Never
this was all just a performance to rake in all the advertising dollars.
We did the meetups, and we're each in a different corner. No, part of the best part about the meetups is that we get to see and hang out with each other in person. We do it to meet the listeners and everything, but the whole thing is that we get to hang out with each other, which we never get to do. So it's great.
Yes, it is. Okay, let's close up there again. I'm going to hang on to all of these questions. Yeah, there's no other ones that are especially timely. So I'll hang on to the rest of these, but always fun. So remember, tomorrow night, it's going to be Andy, Galen, and Chris from IU Artifacts. They are going to walk you through IU Louisville 1993. The link is at assemblycall.com/rewatch. We'll be tweeting as it happens, synchronized rewatch, all that stuff. and post-game show afterwards. So we hope that you guys are there. And then Sunday will be IU Kent State. Same time, same place. Have a good night, everybody.
All right, guys. Later. Thanks for watching.
Yep.
Good night.